off with just a quick welcome, and we will walk through a couple of key parts of the functionality here in Webinar Geek, because we'd love this to be as much of a connect and a true conversation as possible. So just by way of brief introduction, my name is Kate Feeney. I was a principal people science consultant at Glint, at LinkedIn and Microsoft, and I'm now leading the People Success Academy here at Eclectik and working with customers on the people science side as well. And I'm very delighted to be joined by my former colleague who led the people, Think Like a People Scientist and many other brilliant initiatives, Avnita. If you want to say hello and introduce yourself.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you, Kate. Delighted to be partnering with a former Microsoft People Science colleague. Like Kate, I was also a consultant for Viva Glint for many years, followed Glint through the LinkedIn and the Microsoft acquisitions. And yeah, a few months ago, I joined Eclectik to work as a consultant and a People Science manager. So yeah, great to carry on with many familiar names in the audience. And thank you very much for joining today.
Brilliant. And Steph, do you want to say hi quickly as well? Another Glint colleague.
Yeah, the old team's back together. Yeah, I'm joining from the customer success side of the house. So also came from Glint, LinkedIn, Microsoft, that whole run. Very excited to be talking about the topics that we have today, and hopefully talking about it from more of a CS vantage. So very, very happy to be here.
Brilliant. Thanks, Steph. So success team, the customer success team and the leadership team here at Eclectik, we're keen to have a conversation with customers, practitioners, people in the field. And this is the first, hopefully, of many of those opportunities. In terms of the technology, as we said, this is perhaps new to some of you, it's new to us. So there's two key pieces that you can use throughout. If you have questions that are burning questions, whether they're for customer success or they are for people science or for Eclectik in general, you can throw those into the Q&A and we'll come to those either over text, or we can pull the question into the conversation. And then we'll also ask you for your input, your thoughts, anything that you want to react to. You can use the public chat as well, as you have been doing. Thank you for introducing yourselves and telling us where you're dialing in from already. You'll also see some polls pop up. So we'll get your input as we go through each of the trends as well to understand more about what your challenges are. All right. So let me move us forward then to the agenda for today. So as we've already started, we're giving you an opportunity, hopefully, to get to know us a little bit better at Eclectik, meet the team, and then we'll jump into the top 3 trends in employee listening based on research from lots of organizations that you'll recognize what's coming out in terms of the key trends. And then we'll have an opportunity as a team to unpack these, and want to acknowledge we don't necessarily have all the answers. We need your input as well. And then we'd love to know ultimately what else is on your mind and anything else that we can help you with during these sessions and sessions like this. So we will pass over now briefly to Jonathan, who is our fearless leader, and to do a quick introduction. Do we have Jonathan on the line?
I think he may be popping up any minute now. He's just been invited to come on stage and join us.
It's just like a live event, you know, there's all that suspense.
It is.
Or alternatively, we could jump back to it if we want to. Perhaps while we're waiting for Jonathan, if you do want to start popping in the chat what the key trends are that you are noticing, we will pull those into the conversation as well.
There we
I see
go.
Jonathan joining.
Yes,
Hey, JK.
there we go.
Sorry, it was, people that know me know I love dramatic entrances. So there you go. So hi, everybody. As the team mentioned, my name is Jonathan Congwer. I'm the CEO of Eclectik, and I am lucky enough to be the person leading this wonderful team that you see in front of you. I just want to take a moment to thank you, everybody, for joining that signed up to this webinar today. This is the first of many of Eclectik Connect webinar sessions. So at the end of today, we'd really, as Kate's already mentioned, really love your feedback and your suggestions for anything else you'd like to see in future sessions. But for this inaugural session, we're just going to be talking, as we talked about, some top 3 engagement trends. But before we do that, let's just have a quick introduction to who we are. So a lot of the faces you're seeing in front of you at the moment, we're a bunch of employee engagement and employee experience experts with decades of experience in this field. And we've come from organizations that focus with a lens on EX from either technology or consulting. So whether that's Microsoft or Perceptics or IBM, Deloitte, PwC, we have that sort of unique perspective of both the technology and the behavioral side of employee engagement. So what we tend to offer, or how we work with our customers, is not just on the fancy tech and implementing that and helping getting the best out of employee engagement and employee experience platforms, but it's also the behavioral elements, the people science side, the consulting, the strategy side, as well as the data and analytics perspectives as well. And increasingly now, because the whole world is having an AI lens on everything, we're bringing that, or the unique perspective. I think what we're bringing is the EX lens on AI adoption within businesses and organizations. So we'll come on to what that looks like later on, but that's just a quick introduction to the company, and yeah, hopefully you'll enjoy what we are about to present today.
Thanks, JK. So as we've been discussing, we're really keen to get your sense of the trends that you've experienced. So if you want to pop them in the chat, one word, a sentence, any of your pain points, what are the things that are coming up for you, the questions you're being asked, or the things that are intriguing you, you can pop it in the chat, let us know, and then we'll jump into the trends that we've been seeing.
And I think while those are coming in, I'd love to put this out to the team. And I know, JK, you were at a conference earlier this year, a few weeks ago. Without preempting the whole session that we're going to do today, anything coming up for you in terms of big trends?
Yeah, I mean, every single stand at Unleash, this is Unleash in Paris last month, had some element of AI, and I know we're going to talk about AI specifically. What was encouraging to hear though was that, and this is a message from the keynote speaker, Scott Galloway, and I'm sure a lot of you may have already read his work or seen him speak before, but this common misconception that AI is coming for your job, or AI is taking people's jobs. What came out of that is that that's not really the case, that actually what Scott's sort of headline is, AI isn't going to take your job, but somebody who knows how to use AI is going to take your job. And I think that that really resonated with a lot of the crowd. Now, it's a HR crowd, so of course they would support that view, but it really, and I think it really aligns with, again, some of the content we're going to share with you today. And I really believe that as well. I don't think it's the case that AI is coming after all our jobs, but it is certainly something we all need to be aware of. So a human-centric view of all of the work within employee experience and HR still holds true, I think.
Thanks, JK. And we have a couple of responses in the chat as well, Kate. So Jane says, thank you for your response, Kate. Jane, you said more requests for pulsing and the use of AI. We'll cover that a little bit later on. And yeah, Desiree, absolutely uncertainty about job security. I think that's with many of us today, no matter what industry you work in.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about this, but the requests for pulsing, they're really interesting. The percentage of organizations pulsing more than annually has shot up. It's in the 70%. We'll talk about what that means in terms of the use of that data. But yeah, really interesting that you're experiencing those requests for pulsing as well. Leela's shared as well more frequent real-time surveying and how to improve manager effectiveness. Yeah, absolutely. These are trends that we've noticed as well.
Okay. Thank you. And please keep them coming. We'd love to see, obviously forums like this are really great for you to kind of listen and hear from each other. So please keep your comments coming in the chat. We'll just move forward for now. And yeah, so we've heard a little bit about what you're hearing in terms of the top 3 trends in employee listening. So what we wanted to do now is just kind of distill down all the data and all the research that we have seen in the last few months. There was a bunch of reports and things that came out from a lot of the big survey providers in this space towards the end of this year, commenting on what they're seeing in terms of employee listening and kind of disruption. So we're kind of going to take you through each of these trends one at a time. And I guess no surprises here for anyone. You've mentioned it in the chat already. JK, you mentioned it as well. But yes, AI is transforming employee listening, probably the biggest disruptor that we have right now in the people analytics space. And what we're seeing, a stat that kind of stood out to us is just how many survey providers are starting to incorporate or already have incorporated some form of AI or a co-pilot into their platforms. So if you think about Copilot in Viva Glint, for example, you know, that's a functionality that helps HR leaders and managers get to actionable insights quicker by kind of reducing all the noise in the comments and allowing stakeholders to see what really matters and what's really being said from thousands of the comments that come in. So that's just one example of the functionality that we're seeing. Another thing is that despite this encouragement, I guess, from the tech leaders and the tech companies in this space, and the kind of the HR tech companies, we also have to be mindful of the fact that employees are still concerned about data privacy. And they're looking for that reassurance that my leaders and my organization are going to protect my data and are going to use it in a way that is responsible and for the right reasons. And this was reported by a Microsoft report last year, but just this year itself, Qualtrics reported that just over half, or I would say only just over half of employees said that, I believe my leaders will act with benevolence when it comes to protecting their information through AI, which is, I guess, a bit of a concern and something we definitely need to be mindful of going forward. However, this is what's really interesting. So Qualtrics also reported this year that despite the continued concern about confidentiality, data protection, use of personal information in AI and employee listening, then we might start to see the tide turn a little bit. So just this year, what Qualtrics found was that 60% of employees said, I'm comfortable, okay, with my organization using passive listening. Or using my data in passive listening. And passive listening, if you haven't heard before, what this really means is where your organization will scrape data from non-direct means. So this is not where you've directly kind of responded to a survey, but it's where your data is being taken from the emails you write or the comments you leave on a survey or productivity signals from your M365, data and how you work. So that was interesting, I think, for me here, just that we might be able to see a little bit more comfort and reassurance around the use of AI in this space moving forward. And I'm going to hand over to our CEO, JK, now, just to take you through a bit of what he's seeing from a product and a functionality perspective in terms of AI.
Thank you, Avnita. So yeah, this is a very busy slide, so apologies, but there's a lot to fit in. And so yeah, what came out of Unleash and some of our just conversations with some of the other providers, just to learn about what their roadmaps look like, because we've separated them into sort of 2 categories, which you can see on the slide there. So that what you can see right now, and I think is incredibly exciting, is And those logos there are just some of the platforms that are already having these baseline, what we're calling baseline functionalities within their platform. So already, and I'm seeing some of the comments in the chat about the things that customers are asking for. AI is increasingly being injected into these platforms to deliver that. To what end and what the result, we don't know yet, and Steph, I guess, will cover that in the next conversation. But a lot of this is, conversations that I have with some of the product teams with or colleagues in other platform providers, is to say, there's that just because you can does it mean you should add these functionalities. So one of those baseline functionalities they're looking at is, and you'll see this across most platforms now, is that AI analytics into scores and comments. So for example, in Perceptix and Viva Glyn and Qualtrics, you can interrogate your thousands and thousands of comments, and the AI agent will simply summarize those comments and scores to give you very quick, deep insights and analysis. So that's almost becoming a standard platform functionality now. One step further from that is then the AI coach for managers. And again, most of the mainstream platform providers, the larger platform providers, have this AI coach for managers. So again, it's not just being able to summarize, thousands of comments or look at trends within scores, but to actually have personalized coaching conversations with the manager. So that's helping managers think about action planning, thinking about recommendations on how to have conversations with their team. Qualtrics in particular allows HR teams to query the data in such a way that's quite deep and meaningful. Of course, again, Qualtrics links to their customer experience data as well. So their agents essentially sitting over both sets of data, which again is incredibly powerful for HR teams. So those are the baseline capabilities. Again, you should start seeing more of those across the smaller platform providers as well. In terms of the future capabilities, and as I was putting this slide together, I couldn't actually work out which one to go with first, so I'm just going to improv a little bit here. But the one that I think the most, when you think about AI and future capabilities within the listening platform, survey design is the obvious one. To help HR teams to create their next pulse by simply looking at their past surveys and their past survey results to identify potential blind spots, to create question sets that they may want to think about. So that AI-assisted survey design, again, it's already on the roadmap for a number of the platforms, and you should see those coming really certainly within the next year, or at least one or two of the platforms. That's also backed up by AI-assisted analysis. That's deeper use of the large language models to look at internal as well as external best practices. That's bringing in benchmarking. That's bringing in ideas on action taking, as well as predictive analytics. And again, some of this is already in some of the existing platforms. What's really exciting for me, and probably going to be controversial, is this new switch to conversational listening agents. So if all of us think about the surveys that we've taken in our time, most of them are static questions. Here's a link, click on the link, and you scroll through 20, 40, whatever number of questions. That seems to be that function, certainly with the mainstream platform, seems to be being pushed to one side, with a favoring a conversational listening agent. So what that is a two-way personal conversation between the user and the AI. So it looks like a ChatGPT screen. So you click on the link inviting you to the survey, and it looks like a WhatsApp chat or a ChatGPT chat. And it just starts off with, hey, Jonathan, how are you feeling about working at X today? You mentioned work-life balance, and it's more of a conversation. The problem with that is it's difficult to get benchmarks, but at least two of the mainstream survey platforms have already released this, and Viva Glyn's releasing that functionality next year as well. Building on that, you're also going to have what's going to be called real-time adaptive targeted microsurveys. I couldn't think of a better way to summarize that. And what that effectively means is, imagine your main survey is live and the AI detects a theme of psychological safety amongst several functions or regions. What the AI will then suggest to the HR team will say, hey, I think we should run a pulse to those people so we can dive deeper whilst the survey is live around psychological safety. And you won't need to create questions. It will just know who to send that follow-up survey whilst the survey is live. So it comes back to you saying, hey, Jonathan, we're interested in your comments on psychological safety. Here's some follow-up questions that we'd like to ask you about. Now, what that means is the time to deeper insights shortens, because normally what you would happen is close the survey, look at the results, realize something's going on with psychological safety, and then send a pulse. This allows a more quicker time to action. And some platforms are already doing this in a way, in terms of they do sort of survey branching, but you kind of already have to configure it before that happens. AI, from an AI perspective, it's more adaptive, and it will reduces the need for further pulses. And finally, Anita's already touched on some of this, which is the ambient listening. This is, for me, the most controversial one, because yes, it's essentially passively capturing employee sentiment. And yes, it's looking at some things that I would find moderately concerning, which is things like emails or Teams chats or Slack chats, to work pattern analysis as well, which teams you're collaborating with, to things like your HR or IT tickets, or collaboration tools like project sites or wikis that you're collaborating on. And the new phrase that I've learned for this week, and if you take nothing away from this webinar except for this new phrase, it's digital body language. What is that? Well, that is your use of emojis, your response rates, response times to messages, and your message length. These are what the AI call mood indicators and can feed into that ambient listening. I know when I first read that, my digital body language was shocked emoji, but that's just, I guess, my cynicism. So that's what ambient listening is. And again, a lot of the platforms are thinking about that. I certainly know Microsoft is thinking about that. So, I think it's more to come from there. What I think all of these, when it comes to the ambient listening side of things, is we're all going to have to decide what's noise versus signals. So some of this will be actual signals we will find valuable, I'm sure, but some of it could be noise. And I guess it's up to the platforms and technology providers to help us figure that out. That being said, I would say that, going back to my sort of opening comments, that fundamentally the human experience and the human expertise on survey platforms, whether it's yours as HR leaders within your businesses or us as consultants, they still remain central to all of these programs. And I'll leave you with this, which is the side note there. At Unleash, there's a HR industry analyst organization called Fosway Group, and they look at HR tech across the board, and they looked at every single major HR tech platform across every part of employee experience. So that's your applicant tracking systems, your HRISs, performance management tools, engagement survey platforms, whatever. They looked across all of them, and then looked at how many AI functionalities that were on their roadmap were actually live. And only 8% of what HR tech firms were saying that they could do via AI were actually live and at the point of being able to be purchased by customers. And that was only from last month. So yes, everyone talks a lot about AI. There's a lot of big, scary things that are coming up. But at this moment in time, I think this is still a human-centered experience, and that's something we stand by. And to build upon that point, I'll hand over to Steph.
Excellent segue. Yeah, so there is a lot of talk, a lot of news, and a lot of noise about AI. So let's distill that information into a framework that you can use when considering how you work with AI. So there's certainly things that AI is going to help you with in terms of having a bigger impact on the work that you do. We've already touched on all of them. So speed and scale. In the chat, it was even mentioned. This is fantastic for turning thousands of comments into themes and summaries quickly. So you don't have to weed through every single comment if you don't want to find out what's happening with the sentiment of your organization. Manager enablement democratized. So you could have managers at all levels of your organization in terms of hierarchy, but also all levels of maturity. And none of them have to be people science experts to understand their results. So it demystifies results so that any manager in your organization can have a clear idea of what's going on and what to do next. And then all of those little prompts, herding the cats, so to speak, AI can do that for you. So really, when you're thinking about where you should leverage AI technology, it's in enabling yourself, enabling your managers, and enabling the scheduling aspect of continuous listening. What we should also keep in mind is that the job of the human that's at the helm of this technology is to be human. AI doesn't build trust. AI doesn't connect people to people. AI is a tool that people are using to connect with one another. So when you're thinking about where your role is amidst all of this emerging technology, you should be thinking about these things that we've listed on this bullet point category on the right: humility and humanity. So my colleague Desiree said this. I'm going to give her credit because I thought this was brilliant, but asking for feedback is an act of humility. Like when you're asking people to share how they're feeling, that is inherently something that is a gesture of empathy and intentionality. So you should not be using AI to shortcut that. Now, I know that kind of goes against what some of the new emerging technology is trying to do, where it is trying to emulate a human experience by asking conversational questions. So we can talk about how we feel about that, because it is really, I think, undercutting some of that humanity aspect that that I think people need and are looking for. And maybe that could bring some distrust in your methods, which goes into privacy and trust. We saw that stat about employees' belief that their data is going to be used benevolently. Even with aggregate results or masked results, employees and even HR teams worry about results being identifiable. So the job of the folks that are running these surveys to listen to their employees is to make sure that everyone's really clear on how their data is going to be used, what their options are for opting out, what that means that it's aggregated. We've seen questions about this in the past, even before AI. I think now is the time to really double down and make sure that everybody feels like the transparency is there around what exactly is happening with their information. Bias and misinterpretation. Sentiment and intent models can misread slang, dialects, content, context. Smaller teams make noisy signals that even humans sometimes misunderstand. There's so many times where people science consultants within Glint have had to coach HR teams about what it means when a team of 5 or 6 has these big swingy trends. So there is still a need for human review. And that kind of also goes into what we call hallucinations or poor prescriptive advice. So sometimes generative outputs can misinterpret, like they can be inappropriate in tone or misinterpret the context and give incorrect advice. We've probably everyone's heard examples of times where AI has, like a ChatGPT feature has pieced together information and presented data that wasn't accurate. So there's still room for HR teams to make sure that they're providing clear, correct responses. And then the big thing, and I think this one probably should be in bold, adoption and last mile execution, which really just means the technology is not going to create the change alone. There still needs to be a creative element, a manager enablement, manager training, playbooks, motivation for accountability, the action layer that goes beyond AI providing you with results and gathering results, that action layer, what you do with the results, is the real test. So I think that when you're thinking about how do I leverage this, yeah, use AI to get information and use AI to distill that information as something that you can understand. But then when it comes to going out and connecting with people, showing them that you're taking action, showing them that their feedback matters, showing them that there's a person on the other end of that feedback channel, that's where your organization can really lean in. The people at the helm can lean in. And I think based on what we've seen in the past prior to AI, and based on some of the signals that we've seen about how people are feeling about AI, if you lean into the connection piece, the humanity piece, your listening strategies and the tools that you're using can really shine.
All right, thank you so much, Steph and Jonathan. We are going to skip the poll, just in the interest of time. We've got so much to cover, but we would love to hear from you what your biggest concern is when it comes to AI in the chat. You've been sharing this, your reactions to this already, but we'd love to hear more. I was just typing response to you, Leila. I think it's a really good point that you've just made here about balancing the technology, the survey, and the human connection component. I do think adding in AI when we already have quite a lot of bells and whistles might create more noise. So I'm hearing from a lot of practitioners that they feel that pressure, as Steph just mentioned, to protect that container for human connection that really the survey does create. Yeah, so please keep sharing your thoughts in the chat. Team, what are your thoughts, reflections, Avnita, as you've heard Steph and Jonathan share?
I mean, I love the point that I think, Leila, you originally made about maybe there's a reliance on managers just kind of, I wouldn't say hiding behind the data, but saying, I'll just do a pulse survey because I feel more comfortable doing that than asking my team. And I think it would be such a shame if we lost that humanity. I think many managers have become managers because they enjoy the people side of management. And so we have to create this balance where we're not taking that away, but we are just giving them, you know, AI that helps them do their jobs better as a human manager, and you know, and not AI. So yeah, thank you for that comment.
Nice. All right, well, maybe we'll move ahead to the second trend, which very much builds on what we've just been talking about when it comes to maintaining the humanity of the conversations with employees, which is ultimately what the survey process is all about. And looking at, in the second trend, the role of the manager there. So you'll be, I'm sure, aware of the importance of managers. We know that they account for 70% of the variance in engagement. And so managers have been given a hugely important role in the action-taking process. And that is something that, on top of many other elements, has become more challenging, in fact, for managers. So we saw manager engagement in this last year drop from 30% down to 27%. Typically, you'll see manager engagement is higher than employees on their teams, but that's starting to get closer. And if you look a little deeper into that, actually, for managers under 35, there's been a 5% drop. And then for female managers, there's been a 7% drop. So there is a decline there that isn't necessarily being matched with resourcing. So we see that actually there are fewer middle manager jobs being advertised as well, a drop of 42% between 2024 and 2022. So a big drop in terms of the boots on the ground, the number of managers managing and leading teams. And we know that once you get teams beyond sort of 7 or 8, the effectiveness of those teams goes down, the ability to build those relationships we've been talking about goes down, and the level of stress on the manager goes down. I read just recently that in healthcare, the average number of direct reports for a manager now is, you can guess while I take an in-breath, it's 22. So 22 to 1 is just an outrageous ratio. And so it's no surprise that managers in general are experiencing massive burnout. The average rate of burnout for employees is 35% will experience it at some point, but managers, that's at 55%. So I'm painting a very grim picture for you of the life of a manager. And unfortunately, we're not meeting that challenge with support. And I think that's, if I was to give you one takeaway, it would be just the importance of meeting managers, not with more expectations and more reminders of the impact they have, but instead with that support. So only 44% of managers are actually receiving training on people development at all, and 70% of managers don't get manager development when they first start that role. So there's a big gap there between expectation and preparation for managers. Meanwhile, they're spending 40% of their time firefighting, and that is taking up a huge amount of headspace, and just something to really keep in mind as we add in new bells, whistles, tools, that really for them, the cognitive load is already incredibly high. So to just jump ahead to some other research, this is from our people science colleagues at Microsoft. And this looks at what are those barriers for managers when it comes to action taking. So I've just shared with you some of the kind of contextual challenges that they experience. And there are three kind of buckets in terms of the surveys themselves that lead to inaction. The first is a perceived lack of quality when it comes to the data. So 25% of the themes feeling outside the control of the manager. And you could debate that, something like belonging. Sometimes managers don't know what to do about that when actually they have an enormous role to play. But there's an education gap there perhaps as well. If we look at the second tier, perceived actionability of the themes as well. So looking at how difficult it is for them to actually take action on it. If it's something to do with removing barriers to execution or inclusive leaders, it might be genuinely outside of their control. So there's a survey design, perhaps question. And then finally, the use of formal tools and processes. So you can see there that 19% are saying that their organization doesn't have a mechanism for capturing action. There's another piece of research that we don't have featured on screen, but I find this really interesting. It looked at what managers actually want. What is it they're looking for? And it's a little bit like, I don't know if you ever had your parents tell you what they wanted for Christmas when they were younger. My mum used to say, all I ever got and all I ever wanted was an orange. Well, managers, what they're actually asking for are tools like templates. They just want templates was the top thing, top right in terms of usefulness and what's easy to produce. So if you're looking for a quick solution, tools to give managers, actually templates for conversations are what they're asking for. And also connection with other managers. Another free and easy light lift support for managers is putting them in cohorts, putting them in communities of practice to discuss and digest their results together. And again, that could be turned on overnight just with a meeting invite. So something to consider. All right. So we'd love to hear from you if we have time, Avnita. What do you think? What are the top 3 barriers in your organization when it comes to helping managers respond meaningfully to feedback? So let's go ahead and launch the poll.
Okay, that should be on the screen now for you all to see.
Brilliant.
We'll let those responses come in.
So a few votes already for quality of data. Time and resources, the top one so far, manager skill.
It's moving so dramatically, I don't think I can keep up with what the leading contender is here. Okay.
This is like watching a very exciting horse race, yeah.
We'll give it a couple more seconds and I'll go ahead and close the poll. We have, yeah, okay. I'm going to close that. We have a little movement now. So let's see what we have. Right. So the lead contender, we have a tie, it seems, between time and resources and manager skills. Yeah, would love to hear what it is about manager skills when you were responding to that one. Any thoughts from the panel on these results?
Yeah, manager skills is no surprise. And just speaking from my experience, so I don't have the in-depth research that the rest of the team has. It's just anecdotally, but I often find in organizations where I've worked that it's the best performer usually gets promoted to a manager. So the best engineer or the best recruiter becomes the manager of the team. That doesn't necessarily mean they're the best manager or leader or have somehow inherited skills to be managers. And sometimes I think organizations forget that there are softer skills, there are behavioral skills that those managers will need to be enabled with.
Any thoughts, Kate, Steph? I think the data literacy one, 5 of you agreed that that's a potential barrier. Definitely hearing about data literacy for HR, and there's been a big song and dance about that. But I think for managers, especially since we are bombarded with more data than ever before, that becomes ever so important. And I think, like JK said, managers aren't necessarily stepping into managerial roles with that data literacy. And I'm guessing that I may be generalizing, but that may be less of the case when you look at the frontline worker population that are doing more manual tasks rather than sitting at their computers.
Yeah, I would say that one of the things that we're seeing coming out of the data is the burnout aspect. As layoffs are happening and people are having to shoulder more work for their colleagues who have left, or as companies are getting leaner, people are taking on more work. And in my experience, working with the admin team for a listening program, there's a lot of emphasis on the accountability piece, making sure that their managers are taking action. But sometimes that can slip into more of a check the box compliance activity. And managers may feel like, and sometimes they report that they just have to do the thing to qualify for the thing. It's just another work task that they're just trying to get through. And I think that it's good to make sure that managers are staying accountable, and it's good to make sure that they're taking action, but we have to be really careful that doesn't become its own busy work. But that the again, the human connection piece is really there, that managers are feeling enabled. It does no good to say take action, managers, if the managers don't feel comfortable with the process, don't feel comfortable getting feedback, don't feel comfortable having tough conversations. So I think you can't make demands of your management team, especially if they're demands that are tied to OKRs or demands that are another thing they have to do, if you haven't given them the skills to actually follow through on those tasks in like a confident way.
Yeah, absolutely. Kate, was there something you wanted to add?
No, I think it's a great point, and Jessica made a very similar one in the chat about how this can be effectively another to-do for managers. I think, a broader question is, how do we rebrand employee listening as a positive experience all around? And I think there's still a lot of work to do on that, and to really compellingly sell, what is the purpose of this? Is this something we just look at year over year and say, oh, it went up 1 point and down 1 point in another department? Or are we showing what we're doing with the results? Are we sharing back stories of how change is being made? That's the ideal state, which I think brings us nicely onto the next trend. So I'll kick back over to you, Avenida, for this.
Yeah, So, right, our last and final trend, which is, I think we've touched upon these a little bit with the previous two trends, but this one is really to the point that, you know, we've got more data than we've ever had before. We're giving more data to managers. HR has more data than it's ever had before. Yet, more data does not seem to be translating into more action in organizations. So if you look at the statistic from Perceptics this year, I actually found this quite surprising. I remember a time when we would really be battling with our clients and saying, look, you need to measure your employee sentiment more than just once a year, you know, move away from the annual cadence. You know, it's like looking in the rearview mirror is the analogy that we used to use at Glint. Yet this year, Perceptics has reported that 75% of organizations are listening at least quarterly. So I actually find that quite surprising, but I think it's to many of the points in the chat that, you know, there is a pressure that get more data, you know, have more evidence. It's just about what we're doing with that data and that evidence after. That's still proving to be a challenge. Yet we know that culture is still, you know, part of organizations, you know, top people strategy for the year. You know, more than 50% of CPOs in 2025 said, yes, it's one of our top 3 priorities for this year. So despite having more data, despite collecting more data around culture and the employee experience, what we're still seeing is HR will still say it's not really helping us do better or be better. So if you look at this stat from Mercer this year, 17% and only 17% of HR leaders said my organization is something I would describe as industry leading. I feel it's making considerable progress. So all that data is not helping us be better. But 68% have said we're only just starting our journey to human-centric productivity. So it's really about connecting the dots between the data and between behavior. And I can see a smile on JK's face because I think you might have something to add here. And it's definitely something that we focus on here at Eclectics is what happens after the survey. You know, as consultants, we've always felt frustrated to hand over the results and say, okay, you're on your own, off you go. We've always felt there's a gap there in terms of what more we can do to help you translate those insights and translate that data into meaningful action that will help you meet your organizational goals. So we've got a quick poll here. I wonder if we have time. I'm going to squeeze it in, but it's just something that you can type in the chat. And the question is, you know, we've spoken about managers, but besides managers, what else? You know, if you had a magic wand type of scenario, what else would help unlock action taking in your organization? And not to lead the responses, but this could be, you know, from across the organization, thinking systemically now. What is it? And what are the foundations that you need to build to improve action taking in your organization? So we'd love to hear your thoughts there. Any responses? Going to hand over to the panel to see if we've got any quick responses as people share their thoughts.
My only thought is just going back to your point around HR leaders is we have this phrase at Eclectik that we always ask ourselves and that of our customers is when we present results of a survey, oftentimes we look at the across the table or across the screen to our customers, leaders, and they're, so what, now what? A lot of them don't know what to do next, even at a leadership level. And oftentimes that's the biggest challenge, but that's where we're here to help, I suppose, with that aspect of it. But yeah, the so what now what question it's not really an answer to this question, but it is something that we often ask ourselves a lot, and we get asked it as well.
Thanks, JK. Kate, Stephanie, anything that you would add here from your experiences?
I mean, Leela's just shared in the chat, the you said we did piece is key. Jenny also mentioned, I think, the importance of it being a leadership expectation. You know, these are things you need to make the intangible tangible. I always give the example of going to a restaurant and being asked, what do you want? And how frustrating it is if the waiter is gone for a really long time, never mind if they never come back. And that's often the lived experience of employees. They're asked over and over about their experience, and they're never told what the reaction to that experience is, or the reaction to that feedback. So I think closing that loop is something we haven't mastered yet, and perhaps AI can enable, but it's still an open item, I would say.
Yeah, and my last thought, or my thought on this is, you showed that stat about quarterly listening, but if quarterly listening isn't followed with quarterly action, you're going to have a less robust survey experience over time. People aren't going to respond. We've seen in stats before that action taking directly correlates to participation on the following survey. So it's great to say, yeah, we're surveying quarterly, but if you don't have a structure in place to actually do something with that, or if you don't have things like you said, we listened, that you're reinforcing throughout the year, you're going to see less data over time.
And just one final comment for me very quickly, because I know we're running out of time, is just to sort of build on actually a point Carter's making it in the chat, is around available listening data. I think one of the things we certainly developing at Eclectik as part of what we would provide our customers as an insights review or a final presentation of survey responses is sometimes we have to acknowledge that that data is subjective data. And for leaders and managers to take actions, it needs to be layered with passive data or objective data. An example we had with a recent customer was that they were, okay. The leader turned around and said, well, of course, that's just the employee's opinion. They just moan about everything. But if we were, and what we're doing is layering other parts of their data. That could be customer feedback data, that could be attrition data, performance data, or even other parts of your graph data from Microsoft. By layering that gives us a more holistic view of actually what's going on. And sometimes that energizes and motivates leaders to suddenly go, oh, okay, this isn't just subjective feedback, it's actually intrinsically linked to performance or KPIs within my business line or function. Anita.
Fantastic. So I'm responding to a comment from Jenny in the chat, so I'll carry on doing that while Kate, you take us home.
Brilliant. All right. Well, thank you all so much for participating so actively in the chat and sharing your experiences. As we said at the start, this is the first, hopefully, of many webinars, and we'd love to know what you're interested in. What did we cover today that you'd like to know more about? Or what didn't we cover that you'd like to discuss in the future? So if you want to vote in the poll, we'll get that activated. Let's see.
I've pressed the magic button, so it should be live.
Fantastic. Thanks, Anita. Yeah, so let us know how we can help you going forward. And then while that's launched, do you want to kick forward to the next slide? We don't have anything in the Q&A, so maybe we'll just give you a little bit of information on how you can stay in touch with us, and then we'll look at the results. So if you want to look at the next slide then. Yeah, so these are our details. We will share, if anyone is interested in the data we've shared today, we can share the deck with you. And feel free to reach out to us if there's conversations that we started today that you'd like to continue. And Avnita, how are we doing with the poll?
Let's have a look. So I will, let's just bring that to a close here. Okay, so we will have to do a you said we did in the next webinar to respond to what you've told us you'd like to hear about AI and employee listening. Oh, it's not the top condensed. I apologize. Okay, this is so holistic listening, bringing sentiment and behavioral data together. We can definitely talk about that. AI and employee listening. I'm sure we could have done a whole session on that today. It definitely is a hot topic. Manager action taking. Yes, the team will take all of this feedback away, everything you've said in the chat, and kind of just take some time to digest and absorb all of that as a team. But yeah, JK, is there anything you wanted to add before we close, or Steph?
Just a big thank you to the team, first of all, for organising this first webinar. It's been really great, and forcing me to turn up on time as well, which is a great feat in itself. But thank you to everyone that's joined, some familiar faces in the chat. Thank you for your support. And yeah, please do, this is a challenge to us and the team, whatever you want us to think about on your behalf, or to present back our thoughts on any topics that are of interest to you. Please take this opportunity and message us as a team or independently. Yeah, we look forward to hearing from you. But a big thank you for your support. Thank you.
Brilliant. And you'll get a request for feedback. As you know, we're passionate about it, so please let us know how you found the session, and hopefully see you on the next one.
Great. Thank you all for joining. And we will be sharing slides, as Kate mentioned in the beginning, along with a recording. So if you don't follow us on LinkedIn already, please be sure to do that. That's where we will tend to advertise these events going forward. And thank you so much for joining and for helping make our first webinar a success. And hope you have a great rest of the day. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.